The shocking beginning. Stop right there. That's what she heard as the flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. A well-dressed black woman, driving home after a long day at work, suddenly found herself surrounded by two police cruisers. She hadn't been speeding. She hadn't broken any law. But tonight, none of that mattered. The officers approached her car with hands already resting on their holsters. Their tone was sharp, their words dripping with hostility. License and registration. Step out of the car, now. Confused but calm, she asked, "Officer, may I know why I'm being stopped?" Instead of an answer, one of the cops snapped, "Don't talk back. Just do as you're told." The woman sitting in that driver's seat wasn't just any ordinary person. She was Judge Valerie Williams, a respected federal judge who had spent years defending the Constitution and ensuring justice was served fairly in her courtroom. Yet here she was, treated like a criminal, all because of the color of her skin. But the officers had no clue who they were dealing with. The escalation. Judge Williams stepped out slowly, keeping her hands visible, the way every black parent teaches their children when interacting with aggressive police. The officers circled her like predators, throwing questions at her in a rapid-fire manner. "Where are you coming from? Why are you dressed like that? Is this car even yours?" She calmly handed over her license and registration, but the officers didn't even look at the ID properly. They were too busy trying to intimidate her. One cop smiked and said to the other, "Probably stole the car. Look at her. Does she look like someone who drives this kind of vehicle?" The other chuckled in agreement. Judge Williams remained calm, but her heart was pounding. Not because she was guilty. She had done nothing wrong, but because she understood how quickly these situations could turn dangerous. Still, she didn't raise her voice. Instead, she asked, "Officers, may I ask what law I've broken? Because I'm certain I haven't done anything wrong." That question only made them angrier. One officer stepped closer, pointing a finger in her face. "You think you're smarter than us? You think you can question authority?" They didn't know that in her courtroom, she was the authority, the moment of truth. As the situation grew tense, Judge Williams decided it was time to reveal the truth. She pulled out her ID once more, this time holding it firmly in front of their eyes. "Take a good look. Read it carefully," she said. At first, the officer dismissed it with a scoff. But when he leaned in closer, his face shifted. The badge didn't just say her name. It clearly read, "United States Federal Judge." The color drained from his face. The other officer, still smirking, leaned over to see, and instantly froze. This wasn't just some random driver they were harassing. This was a powerful figure in the justice system, someone who could hold them accountable, someone with the authority to report them for misconduct and have their careers destroyed. Suddenly, the tone changed. We were just conducting a routine stop." "Yeah, just standard procedure. Nothing personal, you understand." But Judge Williams wasn't smiling. She wasn't going to let them wiggle out of this with weak excuses. With calm authority, she said, "Routine stops don't involve harassment. Routine stops don't involve racial profiling. You didn't stop me because of a broken tail light or a traffic violation. You stopped me because you assumed that a black woman couldn't possibly own this car. That ends tonight." The officers exchanged nervous glances. They knew they had messed up badly. Justice served. The next morning, those same officers found themselves standing in a courtroom, and sitting high above them, wearing her black robe, was none other than Judge Valerie Williams. The courtroom was silent as she stared down at them. The officers who had treated her with arrogance and disrespect just hours before were now trembling in front of her. She spoke firmly, her voice echoing across the room. "Last night, I was reminded of something I've always known, that racism isn't always hidden in the shadows. Sometimes, it walks right up to you wearing a badge. You too abused your power, and you disgraced the very law you swore to uphold." The officers tried to defend themselves, but their bodycam footage told the whole story. Every insult, every aggressive word, every assumption based on race. There was no escaping the truth. Judge Williams handed down her verdict. Not only would disciplinary action be taken, but the entire police department would undergo mandatory reforms, including racial bias training and stricter accountability measures. And as she slammed the gavel, she left the courtroom with one final statement. "Let this be a reminder. Justice does not bow to a badge. Justice serves the truth, and the truth will always win. The story of that night spread like wildfire. Across the country, people cheered for Judge Williams, applauding her courage, her calmness, and her refusal to let injustice slide. She became not just a symbol of power, but a living reminder that racism will always be exposed when faced with truth and justice.